This is the sound check for the Board of Education meeting tonight, January 20th at 7 p.m. This is the sound check for tonight's Board of Education meeting. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. This is an audio check for the January 20th Board of Education meeting. Start at 7 p.m. All right, thank you so much.
Hello, is anybody there?
We're here, Jonathan. We're just waiting for Christine.
Okay, I just couldn't find anyone. Okay.
So how was everybody's day?
I think I see everybody here. So if we can reconvene our meeting to open session. The board has been in executive session since 6 o'clock this evening to discuss several confidential employee matters and a tenure candidate review. We begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Go through introductions if everybody wants to give a wave. We have from the board, Willow Bear, Jonathan Fishbein, Christine Beck, Wendy Sampson, Meredith Moriarty, Chris Meyer, and myself, Holly Dellenbaugh. And from administration, we have Jody Monroe, Dave Hurst, Judy Kehoe, Kathy Johnston, and joining us also tonight, we have Ray Nardelli. First up on the agenda is approval of minutes. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the minutes from the January 6th, 2021 regular board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. Next, item 3, meeting reports. Our superintendent's report.
Thank you. I have a few announcements. The first has to do with our Bethlehem High School Poetry Out Loud contest. This was online this year. We had 11 students participate and 2 faces who have been participating in the past. Pamela White repeated as the champion and Naira Santalese repeated as the runner-up. So this year's first place win came down to a single point, and they'll both represent BC at a regional Poetry Out Loud competition in February. So I'd like to wish both of them good luck. Also, in regards to COVID testing, we did begin our staff COVID testing last week. We began with our middle school and high school staff. This week, we're doing our elementary staff. And we are planning to do student testing, but we are awaiting some follow-up guidance from Albany County Department of Health on how to best handle some of the any positive results that we may get. So more to come on that. And to follow up with that, next week, I will be holding 2 parent forums to check in at the mid-year point. We have sent a couple of reminders and asked people to submit questions in advance. We do want to try and respond to as many of them as we can. The sessions will be Tuesday, January 26th at 10 a.m. and Wednesday, January 27th at 6:30 p.m. So hopefully we'll get a good turnout with that. And I wanted to ask Judy Kehoe, the governor did just announce some budget information, and she has just some preliminary information that we just received. This is very early on, but I'd ask Judy to give us a quick update on where things are looking as we head into the budget season.
So yes, the runs are here. And remember, the number one rule that I ask you to remember every single year is you cannot look at what's on the runs and equate that to what the district will actually be receiving. We will be getting additional information over the next week or so as the various associations are pouring through the bill information. But what we do know is that we do have a recurring proposal on there. We've seen this the last few years where the various separate aid categories, particularly for transportation aid and BOCES aid, are combined into a single line called services, combined services aid. So until we get to drill down into what those underlying formulas are, we're not sure what those adjusted totals will be. We also note that the building aid numbers on the aid runs do not reflect the new aid that is coming from the $32 million project that we just wrapped up on. And that's about close to $1.7 million. So that needs to be manually adjusted. We are still expecting that aid to flow in the coming year. So that will be a sizable addition to the aid. The only other change in the aid that's worth a mention is the STAR program was added in there as an addition to the aid numbers, and then it was pulled out as a subtraction, and it was offset by a COVID supplemental stimulus. So that's the piece that you've probably been seeing in the clipping services and on the news, that the ultimate amount of aid we won't know until the federal government takes action and decides how much, if any, aid will come down to the state. The STAR was an interesting change because that's really a separate program. And when homeowners have that credit taken on their individual property tax bills, that credit comes directly off of our levy, and then the state turns around and reimburses that to us over the course of the year. So that's never been included on those aid runs before. So the big question that I need to have answered is, if the $4 million and change for that supplemental stimulus is merely to offset what they're now showing as a potential reduction in the STAR, it's really not a large gain for us. It could only be $350,000. So we do need to sort through that. And I guess the good news is we had been anticipating that we might have a $3 million reduction in our aid. So at least what was released today isn't any worse than that. And hopefully it will be better in terms of the impact. So we will have more analysis and more information as we get closer to rolling out the actual budget. But that is the quick take on today's review of the preliminary totals.
Thanks, Judy. And then our next board meeting, I'll be doing the state of the schools, which will look quite a bit different than in years past. And then that kicks off our budget season that Judy was just referring to. And then we'll be at each of the subsequent meetings, we'll be doing the different departments and looking at their overall budget. So that's my report for this evening, if anyone has questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Jody or Judy?
Yeah, Jody, on the consent forms that you sent out to families, do we have an idea of how many we got back, or whether people have been declining or consenting? Just some information about how those are working.
The overall consent has been tremendous. The percentage is very high. I know, Dave, you had the tally most recently. It's do you know what the overall percent is?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now. So to date, we have 2,411 that have consented, 637 that have not, and 418 that have not returned at all. So we're at about 80% consent.
Right. Yeah, so we had a great response, and we appreciate the parents' support to move forward with testing.
Any other questions? Next on the agenda is our board report. And first, I wanted to do a little plug for the Theater Without a Net's premiering their fall play on the Bethlehem High School or District YouTube channel. It's called Life After, and it's premiering on Friday, at 7:00. And there have been a number of high school kids that were working on it. And it was written by Amy Roos, one of our Slingerland's teachers. And the kids did it all virtually. So it was great to see that they were working to still keep theater alive in the district, even under these challenging circumstances. So I'm hoping that if you need something to do on Friday evening, you can go to the theater from your sofa. I also wanted, because it's today, to really acknowledge the challenge and thank our social studies and history teachers for teaching our students about history and government during this time in our country. And we all know how important it is. And I just wanted to say thank you to them. And I also really wanted to encourage everyone to listen to Amanda Gorman's poem that was read at the inauguration today. It really reminded me of the importance of teaching poetry, and one of the reasons I love that we participate in the Poetry Out Loud contest. And it really is a great example of how the arts and literature can be a powerful way to bring us together. And I also love that she turned to poetry early on to help herself overcome a speech impediment. I really encourage everybody, if you haven't had a chance, to listen to it. And I believe PBS has actually also put out some lesson plans that teachers can use relating to the poem and her other poetry that's out there. That's all that I had. I don't know if anybody else has anything they would like to share.
I happened to take a look at the YouTube trailer or preview for Friday night, and it looks really good. So I plan to be there and enjoy it. I also wanted to just make a brief comment to thank Jody for the letter she sent to the community 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, when the assault on the Capitol occurred, that evening we had a board meeting, and I really was pulled back and forth as to whether to say something or not. It was developing news. There was a lot that we knew. There was a lot that we did not know. And I really appreciated Jody's leadership in putting out a letter to the community about that incident, and also what the teachers did to explain that incident in some of their classrooms, and to, on a grade level basis, explain what was going on and use it as a teaching moment. So all around, the teachers, and especially Jody, for the comment to the community, I thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Chris?
Go ahead, Chris.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Holly, you brought up social studies teachers, so I'm going to go there. I echo a lot of what Jonathan was saying. I had the same feelings. Like 2 weeks ago, we saw, the worst of America. We saw a storming of the Capitol, which was just, unbelievable and tragic and terrible. And 2 weeks later, we fast forward and we see the best of America. And it's not because of who was elected or which party. It's not relevant. It's the fact that there was a peaceful transition of power, and that's the best of America. And I just want to say something real quick to the teachers. It's just, we serve a valuable role, and that valuable role right now is to share facts and share truth. Really, there are no Republican facts. There are no Democratic facts. They're just facts, and there's truth, and it's so important that we as teachers and educators do that job and share that information. That the truth about Joe Biden is that he's going to have some really good days as president, and he's going to have some really bad days as president. He's going to do some great things, and he's going to do some things that stink. And we need to recognize that. And they're both true. that he can do really good things and really bad things. And we need to focus on those facts and those truths and keep it there, because I think that unfortunately, as a society, we've wandered from them. We've created what we know as alternate facts, and we can't have that. We can't have that. But there needs to be one set of facts. And I think that's such a vital role that we as a school can play.
Christine?
I just wanted to bounce off your sentiments from Amanda Gorman this morning. She was absolutely amazing. I was blown away. And I'm not talking politically, I'm talking from an English, just talented perspective. And I'm glad that you brought up our poets at Bethlehem and how we brought that to Bethlehem, because I think it's so important. But it was very inspirational, and she captured a lot of, I think, how the country has been feeling this past year, and not in a political view, just talking necessarily from COVID and how to be optimistic. And, I hope everybody takes the time to take a look at it. And obviously, I think it was an inspiration for young women who did watch it to see, she's young, 22, what you can accomplish, and just a great outlook. It was just amazing to see. And I wanted to just bounce off your on it because it really moved me anyway.
Christine. Anybody else? Next up on our agenda is our presentation for this evening by Mr. Ray Nardelli on the Smart Schools Bond.
Well, hello, thanks. Nice to see everybody. So I'm going to give you an update on our Smart Schools project. As you know, a couple years ago, we started this whole process, and we ended up submitting a proposal for a phase 1 project. And there we go. Phase 1 project, then we completed that project. So we're going to move on to phase 2 now. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of an update. So next slide. So just to remind you that this all came to be in about 2014 when all public schools across the state got a certain amount of funding to enhance their technology. It was a very $2 billion, and Bethlehem had an allocation of just a little bit over $2 million. And there's no spending deadline, but given the state of financial times we're in, we felt it necessary to kind of move forward on this sooner than later. Next slide. So a couple of the requirements in order to be able to take part in this is that you have to get community engagement, talk to teachers, staff, administration, parents, students, and we've done all that over the course of these years. We have to have a solid technology infrastructure, and thank goodness Sal left me in incredible hands as far as that goes. Sustainability, we need to be able to support whatever we purchase. And again, thanks to you all and the administration, we have a fantastic technology staff with the ability to sustain anything we purchase. And then we have to connect with the non-public schools, and I'll talk about them in a minute. Next slide. The things that we could spend our money on: internet connectivity, learning equipment, which is what we did in phase 1. We can construct facilities for pre-kindergarten, and then we could also spend this money on high-tech security. Next slide. So phase 1, as I mentioned it, we completed it. It was we had to wait about a year between when we submitted our proposal and we got our funding, but it came through right at the perfect time. It was early summer, so we were able to kind of really get things going, and we got the high school and middle school fully equipped over the summer of 2019. And by all accounts, it's been a really successful project. And frankly, I feel blessed because we got that just in time, and because I think it's helping the teachers tremendously in the middle school and high school with this hybrid situation and oftentimes remote situation that they're in. So next slide. So now we're moving on to phase 2, and this was always the thought that we would upgrade our technology on our elementary schools. So we're looking at these numbers for the 5 different schools, a total of about 128 boards. That could fluctuate a little bit as we really get into the nitty-gritty of every single school and before we place our order. Next slide. So in preparation for this, for the last 2 years, we've been seeding these devices out in the elementary schools as technology has been failing in different rooms. Rather than replace it with older technology, we've been replacing it with the newer technology just to see if this solution was going to be as effective in the elementary schools as it is in the high school and the middle school. So we have a good pool of teachers to talk to and pull information from. Next slide. So here's a couple of comments. We reached out to them. Adina Henderson over at Hammergrail, just is saying lots of good things about it. The one nice thing is they have a computer built into them. As you can see, that's that little thing with the antennas over to the right. That computer slots into the back, and that, along with the wireless keyboard and mouse that you can see on the podium over to the left, that makes this basically a standalone unit. So you could just turn this unit on, and because we live in the Google Cloud, all of the teachers' curricular content is on Google Drive or on the web. So just by slotting this in and connecting to it, teachers can do everything they need to do without connecting another physical device to it. Next slide. Justine Marinella, Hammergrail. She's also kindergarten, and she's one of our tech coaches. She's incredibly tech savvy, and I was happy that we were able to give her one for the last couple years for her to test and try and give us lots of feedback on it. I was in a kindergarten classroom last week, and it was amazing. It was a little girl's birthday, and she was up at the board, dragging things around, calling kids up to the board. They were dragging things around. They were playing happy birthday videos. I took a little bit of a video. I don't have that to share with you, but it was very cool to see the little kids just, interacting so naturally with the touch features of this board. Next slide. Kelly Ward, as you know, is over at Slingerland's grade 5. So we tried to give these devices to lots of different teachers and lots of different grades to be able to test things out. Again, she's talking here about how it's really helped. And again, because they don't have to connect a computer or a Chromebook to it, it's just a standalone device. It's really proved to be really easy to use. Next slide. Last comment from Greg Balkavich over at Ellesmere. He's in the library this year due to COVID, and so we slid one of these in there on wheels. And I should have taken a picture of him hugging the pedestal here, because he basically says, "Ray, I don't know where I'm going to be next year as far as what classroom, but he said, I'm taking this with me." So he loves it. Okay, next slide. So as far as community engagement, I've just been talking about the pilots that we've been running for the last 18 months. I met with the elementary principals back in November, talked about the plan to move forward with these. We then, Stephanie Berlin, our instructional technologist, and I presented to all 5 faculties and faculty meetings during the month of December. We met with admin council last week, supervisors today, and then of course you all today. So we've been trying to get feedback, talk about our plan, and get comments and questions. Next slide. So a couple of interesting things I found out recently due to the, with regard to the Smart Schools funding is, we had an overage from our middle school and high school project of about $150,000. That was because we had to basically had to prepare this a month or a year ahead of time. By the time we actually made the purchase, the boards were a little cheaper than I had put the allocation in for. Also the installment cost was a little cheaper, so we ended up with an overage. Well, I found out from the Smart Schools folks that we could spend that because we're buying exactly the same thing for the elementary schools. We could spend that immediately without putting any more paperwork in, which was a great thing to hear. So when I looked at the budgets of the 5 different elementary schools, it just so happens that Glenmont is almost right at 150,000 when I factor in all their classrooms and the different sizes and what they need. So the plan is that this spring we're going to install. Basically, we're going to convert Glenmont completely to these ViewSonic interactive boards. And then the other happy news was that we don't have to submit from scratch a presentation or a proposal for this next round because, again, we're buying the same things just for different classrooms. So all we have to do is file an amendment, which hopefully will speed it up a little bit. No guarantee on that, but that's the hope. So as soon as I get, I've been back and forth with Smart Schools the last week. And as soon as I get final approval from them, I'm going to submit the amendment. And then it's a waiting game. The committee, they haven't met since July to review these projects. So, which kind of means I think they're gonna meet pretty soon. So if it's possible for us to get in on that review session, that would be tremendous. The hope, crossing my fingers, would be that if they could possibly approve us by this summer, then we'll have the summer months to kind of get this together and into the classrooms for next school year. But part of me says don't even think about it. Just think about 1 year. So 1 year from today, maybe will be approved. And if earlier, then that'll be a pleasant surprise. Next slide. As far as our non-publics go, their allotment is totally based on enrollment at the moment that this program was announced. So 2013, that top line is the enrollment numbers of those different schools. And bottom line, they each got $250 per student. So 250 times that number on the top line is their total allotment. And during phase 1, that second line shows what they spent. They bought interactive panels and Chromebooks and some computers. And then what they have remaining is on that bottom line. And I've been in contact with all 3 schools. So they're going to be getting me their order to complete that process. And finally, once we spend, frankly, I don't think, even though I put a budget of 590 something, I can't remember the exact number, I don't think it's going to be that much. So I think we're going to end up with more left over than 282 at the end of phase 2. But we'll see once everything shakes out. But I've been talking to Greg Nolte about security cameras. We have recently moved from one security system to another. And I believe in the last bond, we have upgraded many security cameras to the newest system, but we still have a lot to go. So we may use the remaining Smart Schools dollars on security cameras, or another option is we need to connect all of our wiring closets in the high school with fiber optics. So we have somewhere in a range of 8 to 10 different little wiring network closets around that big, massive high school, all coming back to the main server room. So right now they're all connected with copper, and eventually we need to connect them with fiber. So that's up for debate. We'll be deciding that once we get the amendment through. So that concludes my presentation. So just, if you have any questions, I'm ready for that.
Thanks, Ray. I just had one quick question, which is in the elementary schools, I think a lot of, if not all the classrooms have those smart boards in them. When these new boards go in, what's happening with the old ones?
Well, any ones that have value, we have lots of options to sell them. Either so we can put them on public surplus. That's kind of the standard way. But we could also offer them to other schools. And there's other avenues to companies who are constantly emailing me for my old equipment. So there's lots of ways to get money back from any of those projectors and boards that are still not too old. I mean, there's a good smattering out there, actually. There's some very old ones, and there's some that are on the newer side that I'm sure we can get some value from.
Okay. And with the new boards, are you finding that that they're fairly intuitive, or should the teachers, like for example at Glenmont, is there going to be a learning curve for them with figuring out how to operate them?
Yeah, it's we will definitely do lots of professional development, just like we did in the middle school and the high school. During tech boot camp a couple summers ago, we had basic, open kind of an open lab where teachers would just come and play. And we had all of our tech coaches, our high school and middle school tech coaches were running those. So probably the first thing we would do is we have 5 elementary tech coaches, 1 in each building, plus, as I mentioned, Stephanie Berlind, our instructional technologist. So between the 6 of those, and then I have some others on my staff like Navarre, Johnson. So we would make sure that the tech coaches are all very familiar with those boards, and then we'll just run sessions to make sure that everybody is. In fact, thinking about it, in the middle school and the high school, we actually had we did one-on-one sessions. Once the board was in their room, teachers made appointments, and a tech coach would go to their room and spend like 15 or 20 minutes with them, just helping them log in, sign on to Google, make sure that their files were there, and giving them some basics. And then we continue to do professional development as we go, after that initial set. So for sure.
Does anybody else have questions for Ray? Meredith?
First, Ray, I just want to say thank you for being so diligent, back in 2018 or whenever it was that you filed this paperwork. If you had not, done that so quickly and been on the ball and made these forward-thinking plans, we would not have been able to operate as we have this year. So I really wanted to thank you for your forward thinking. I'm sure you did not imagine this, but I appreciate that you were so diligent with that. But you did say in phase 3, we do have a little bit more money to spend. And so I wanted to ask how our network strength is currently, whether or not we have the bandwidth. Certainly when you were putting together the network, you were not imagining every single teacher live streaming all day in every single classroom. So do we have, how is our network at that point? Yeah. Is that something we need to upgrade?
I have to say that coming into this year, I'm not usually a nervous guy, but you can't really load test a system like our network until everyone comes on board and they start to do everything that they were going to do. And I was nervous. All of us tech directors, I'm in a tech director group, and we were all kind of on pins and needles those first weeks. But I since I came on, I added a backup or a secondary internet connection. So now instead of just, numbers probably won't mean a whole lot, but we had a 500 megabit connection when we had 300, then we moved it to 500. Now we have 2 500s. So we have a gigabit of a pipe, so to speak, out to the internet. And as far as, so there's no bandwidth issues going out or coming in. Now, the question was what was our network like internally, going from room to room and that kind of thing. And, in the end, we ended up, you guys supported upgrades to our firewall, which is a big deal because all the traffic goes through our firewall. So we installed that this summer prior to, this crazy fall. And that helped tremendously because with the additional processing power of our dual firewalls, that was able to kind of move traffic a lot more expediently than it was last year. So anyway, to kind of a long-winded answer to say we are in good shape, and I can only tell you that because on paper we were in good shape, but we're doing great out there. I mean, I think and that's not to say that there's not hiccups here and there for sure. I think there's days that Google is slow, and you go on something called, the down detector website, and it shows Google is down or Google Docs are down or whatever. So, from day to day, it's always, you're never quite sure why things are a little sluggish or slow, but we have a lot of, we have the ability to kind of diagnose if a teacher does say that their network is a little slow. We can put some devices in that area to diagnose to see what the problem is. So most of the time, it's not our network; it's something else. It could be the site people are connecting to. But anyway, long story short, our network is very solid. And over the course of the next 5 years, we're going to be upgrading our network. You'll be hearing more about that over the course of board meetings, I'm sure.
Great. Well, I just want to say thank you to you and your staff for all of your work this year. I know it's been a crazy year, but you really have made what we're doing this year possible. So I appreciate it. And then my last question is just whether or not there has been more wear and tear on our Chromebooks this year, just because more kids are bringing it back and forth, and whether or not we need to up the number of Chromebooks that we buy per year to get more into circulation.
I don't think we need to buy additional Chromebooks. So yeah, we are seeing our repair budget has been on a pretty steep upward trend over the last couple of years. And we're actually, so a couple things. We do probably 80 to 90% of repairs ourselves with the staff that we have. So we buy parts directly from Acer, and then we do the repairs ourselves. So we're saving a lot of money by doing that ourselves. We just made a decision to switch over to a Dell Chromebook from an Acer Chromebook to a Dell. Just to we did a pilot with some Dells, and they seemed a little bit more durable than the Acers. So we ordered Chromebooks the first week of July, and I just heard this morning that they might be here by the end of January. So we'll see. And actually, who's suffering? Our fifth graders are suffering, and some of the younger grades. I think first grade had the old ones, and fifth grade had the old one. The fifth graders, for the moment, I think, are really struggling. And there's a lot of other, when you're asking about should we have more Chromebooks, I mean, we have an incredible amount of these older Chromebooks that, thank God, again, somebody was watching out, it was dumb luck. We were going to get rid of them, and we didn't. And so we have all these older Chromebooks that we're able to give students, but they don't perform anywhere near as well as the newer ones. So I've been so desperate to get those into the fifth graders' hands. So hopefully by the early part of February, they'll have new Chromebooks. But I've looked into insurance. I've looked into maybe asking asking parents to pay a nominal fee. A lot of schools do that. You know, parents will pay $25 just to kind of cover repairs. But, you know, so far we're doing okay. And if it gets, out of hand, we'll have to deal with it when we get there. But there's no doubt that there's a lot more wear and tear on them. As you know, I think the whole elementary, 3 through 5, we purchased really kind of very durable cases for them. So when they do carry them back and forth, they have, and actually for the middle school too. So for grades 3 through 8, they have nice durable cases. And then when they get to high school, they just take care of them.
Willow, did you have a question?
Yes. If I can remember what it was. Oh, the boards that you presented on tonight, the smart machines. What is the shelf life that we can expect out of them? And does the cost that we paid for them include a warranty of any sort or upgrades? I'm just sort of wondering when the next outlay of that.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So think about those boards as two main pieces. You got the TV, I'll call it, and that's got a life of about 10 years. So there's no moving parts in that. That's gonna, those should last. Those have a 5-year warranty. So if there's any problems with those for 5 years, we'll get a replacement. But by all accounts, and the fact that, devices like this have been around for a while, they have about a 10-year shelf life. The computer that slots into the back of them, they have about a 5-year shelf life, or useful life, I'll say. So, and that's already a part of my 5-year budget. I mean, they're already slotted in my budget to be replaced. I think, I don't know, this is year 2 that they're being used, so that they're going to be used for 3 more years before we have to replace those computers. So yeah, it'll be 2029 when we'll be thinking about replacing boards. And who knows, maybe they'll last 12 years. I mean, we'll just have to see where technology goes.
Yeah. Okay. And then the other question was about whether or not they had accessibility for students with visual disabilities.
They're a computer, so whatever whatever you can install on a computer, basically they're just a Windows computer with a humongous touchscreen. So anything that you can install on a Windows computer will, you could utilize on those devices. So, I think that's that's a question. We haven't, to my knowledge, we haven't had any special requests like that in the middle school and high school. Even though, we do have them in some of the SES rooms. So there must be software that they are using. But because it's just a computer, we haven't really been involved too much in helping those through.
Okay. My son's classroom has one, and it's been an invaluable tool as far as I can tell in the skills room. So high praise as a parent who hasn't actually seen it in action, but hears about how it motivates my student to learn. So
that's great to hear. Is that Ellesmere? Hammergrill. Okay, great. That's awesome.
I think that's what he has. Maybe he has something different. His teacher was on the list in one of the slides.
Well, whenever we get back to normal and you all go out there and visit schools like you do once a year, hopefully, we'll have some of these. Well, we do have some in the elementary classrooms. You should watch them, because it is really fun watching them, those digital natives.
Anybody else have questions for Ray? Ray, Jonathan, did you have something?
I just wanted to say thank you to Ray for the job he's doing. Really wonderful. All the devices that you've gotten out, the speed which you've gotten them out, and the fact that they keep working. So thank you.
Well, it's my staff. I mean, again, I'm blessed with a staff of, with a great staff that and in numbers too. I mean, we added a help desk tech this year, and we have the people who can support, anybody who needs assistance. And it's a great situation we're in. Thank you.
Thanks, Ray, for presenting to us and answering all of our questions.
All right. You're welcome.
Next up on our agenda tonight is our recognition of public comment. We did have a few comments that came in. As usual, all of the comments will be attached completely to the minutes, but I will summarize them at this point. We had two comments that came in, one from Christian Greco and one from Carol Butt, encouraging the district to look into the purchase of electric school buses and advocating for electric school buses with respect to their impact on the climate. We had one question that came in from Janet McLaughlin asking, I'd like to know when decisions will be made about spring sports, particularly those that were pushed from fall. I'm assuming she means the fall 2 sports, both if they will happen and if so, which levels. And Jody, I don't know if at this point you have any information you can share about fall 2 or the spring. And if not, we'll wait.
There's been no updates from the state on anything related to spring sports at this time.
Okay. I figured we were still kind of in a holding pattern, but thought I'd check.
Jody, do we have any plans yet in terms of other spring activities, spring concert series, or anything that we would normally be planning right now beyond sports?
One of the things, obviously, we would look to do is try to get some after school activities going, even if it's small numbers, getting kids to be able to access their teachers at the secondary level after school. I had meetings about the musicals in the spring, about some possible options for those. So we are looking at that. I mean, right now the numbers, and the weather aren't that conducive. But yeah, those are some things that we are looking to be able to offer. So.
We also had a comment from Claudia Miranda Julian, who writes that she reviewed the working draft of the police reform and reinvention collaborative plan that the town and the committee are putting together, and asks whether members can speak to the rationale involved in continuing to support the wearing of sidearms by SRO and DARE officers on school grounds. And Jody, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they're required by law to wear them, the police officers, and that's why they do.
That's correct.
We also had a comment that came in from Michael Gibbons asking if the high school has any plans to keep the senior class engaged, recognizing that they are unfortunately looking to lose about a year and a half if COVID continues, and stating that there's been minimal communication about the effect on them and any plan to give them a sense of connection to the school, and that they really have had nothing to look forward to. So Jody, maybe, I'm wondering if maybe Dave Domel, if we could forward this comment to him, and maybe he could reach out to this parent and see if he can address the concern.
Sure, we can do that. And just so the board knows, I know that Dave has sent a couple communications out to parents specifically about the senior class, and gave them who would be helping to coordinate activities similar to what happened last spring. So who the senior class advisors are, who the student senate, who the parent groups are. So I know he has shared that a couple different times. So I'm not sure if maybe this parent didn't get that information, but I can have Dave follow up with him.
Okay, great. And then we had one last comment that came in from Christian Montenegro, which includes a few questions about the COVID updates in the emails that we receive with COVID updates, and what does it mean when it states no exposure at the school? How is exposure measured? And then there's a number of other questions about the decisions to by the school to go virtual, when that happens, when it doesn't happen. So Jody, I was thinking I could forward that email to you, and maybe you could take a look and address some of those comments to that email, and maybe also consider them for the parent presentations next week.
Yep, we can do that.
Next on the agenda, item 6, action items. A, finance action items. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following finance action items 1 and 2.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. B, professional personnel action items. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following professional personnel action items 1 and 2.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. C, support personnel action items. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following support staff action items 1 through 9.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. D, other action items. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following action items 1 through 4.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. Item 7, future meetings and events. Our next board meeting is on Wednesday, February 3rd at 7 o'clock, anticipating executive session at 6. We have a policy committee meeting scheduled for Monday, February 22nd at 6 o'clock. And then the board meeting after that is on Wednesday, February 24th at 7, anticipating executive session at 6. And the meeting after that is on March 3rd at 7, again, anticipating executive session starting at 6. Seeing no need to adjourn to an executive session at this point, can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.